Ever wonder why some people thrive under pressure while others break? It's not luck, it's science. Welcome to the Mind Performance Podcast. I'm Lindsay Paoli, a therapist and a mental performance strategist. Each episode, you'll get expert insights, real stories from high performers, and small shifts that lead to big results, so you can be better at what matters. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the Mind Performance Pod. I'm your host, Lindsay Paoli, and Happy New Year! Welcome back into 2026, guys. I hope everybody had an amazing holiday. Let me tell you, 2 weeks was a very long time. I am well rested-ish and also very excited to be back into routine. But I did record those 2 podcasts about being able to be present and connected during that time. And I definitely practiced what I preached and had a lot of presence and connection with family and friends that came to town while completely disconnecting from the business, hence our 1 week break in the podcast, which hopefully gave you the opportunity to do some catching up, because clearly you were also taking time off and spending time with your family instead of listening to podcasts, right? Absolutely. So hopefully you're all caught up, and I am so excited about today's episode. In fact, today's episode right now is solely for our early listeners. So if you are on board and you're subscribed and you're following on Instagram, then you know about this quote unquote secret recording, this secret podcast. And that's done intentionally because what I'm teaching today is my custom version of vision boarding, but it has evolved so much more than that. I really need a different name for that. But Visioneering is my custom training specifically for understanding how to set and achieve goals. I have done this training consistently year over year since 2020. Not only for individuals and for my clients, but for Fortune 500 companies, for startup leadership teams, and then for hundreds of entrepreneurs who have paid to come and see it live and virtually. And so this is the first time that I'm offering it as a free option, again, only to my dedicated subscribers and listeners and anybody who's found out about this during this week only from my Instagram. So I'm so glad to have you here, and buckle up because today we're workshopping. We're not just chatting. So hopefully you've scheduled out some time to sit in a nice cozy place with a pen and paper, at the very least, maybe a laptop if you really feel the creative urge to create a vision board, because that's what this was originally designed for. If you want to go all out and do collages with magazines and poster board, more power to you. I fully encourage it. Candidly, and I'm going to sound like a bitch, it just no longer fits my aesthetic. I'm 42. I can't be having magazine collages hanging everywhere, but you do you, boo. And I seriously mean that. Don't let me judge you out of having whimsy. And I should say too, that this is exactly why I created Visioneering. Originally it was called Vision Bossing. And because I went corporate, I wanted it to be more appealing to both genders. I've also really outgrown my girl bossing phase, so Visioneering is more fitting. But if I catch myself saying vision bossing, it's just habit. It's been a part of me since opening my business practically. And so what happened, the reason this all came to be is I graduated and I had 2 new babies, and I was realizing like, oh my gosh, like I just crushed it in grad school and it was so much work. I not only got married and had 2 pregnancies, I gave birth to 2 human beings while completing grad school. And then I was just going to go, the plan always was to go right into private practice. And so I had these new babies and I was creating a business for the first time ever, not knowing what the hell I was doing. And I just realized like I had been grinding so long. I had left corporate with the intention of slowing down and having more fun and finding what felt fitting, but I got so excited about mental health and so passionate that I drove myself exactly into the same type of work ethic and grind that I had in corporate. And I was like, there's no way this is how it's meant to be. And so it was one of my first ideas for like, I just want to play. Like, I just want to have fun and like do silly things. And you remember it was like it was around this time of year where you were seeing vision boards everywhere on Pinterest. Not adults really at the time. Vision boarding was not as big a thing as it is now then. It was still very much like a kid thing. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to create a vision board. And as I was creating a vision board, I think I was listening to The Secret at the time with intentions of discrediting The Secret based on all of my new knowledge and my expertise and my paid skill set from graduate school. And so I wanted to, no, maybe I watched The Secret. I definitely didn't read it. I watched The Secret and I was like, this is bullshit. But then as I was watching it, I was like, oh, actually, if I apply a lot that I've been learning neuroscience wise, there's something to this. And I was mad. And so I realized what a powerful training that could be, because having come from corporate and being very against the woo-woo spiritual Eckhart Tolle approach to success, I was like, there could be some crossover here. So I created Vision Bossing for the first time and held it in a tiny conference room in my husband's office and had like 20 paying customers, 4 of which were children. And so I had to start like specify, they were teenagers, but still I cussed a lot. Like I wasn't very professional yet still. So I had to start making a caveat that this is for adults. But anyways, it was the first time it kicked off. And then I started getting asked to do it in places like in hospitality teams. And so it's something that I do truly find really powerful. It's usually I take parts of this to start with all of my one-on-one clients to help them understand some of the background of how their brain works and the neuroscience behind wanting something bigger and being able to connect the dots, being able to bridge the gap. So that's why I'm so excited for Visioneering. So again, this is an opportunity to take some notes, to reflect. We're going to do some activities for kind of like really getting into your head and visualizing really well. Also, the collage is optional. I will say I've gone through several different collages. I've gone through my poster board era. I've also done it on Canva. I've done it as a home screen on my phone. So again, I'm not shitting on it. And as we talk about why having something to visualize is so important, or to like notice every day is so important, you'll get to take your pick of how you use this. All right, moving on. Let's get into this. So why Visioneering? The goal was, again, to make your personal and professional growth feel fun again, because burnout includes procrastination, fatigue, cynicism, pessimism, a loss of future dreaming, fewer moments of happiness, job unhappiness, doubting your core beliefs. And clinically, that was resulting for most of my clients and for myself in anxiety, depression, insomnia, hypersomnia, which is where you sleep too much, panic disorder, hypervigilance, and a decreased window of tolerance, or just an inability to process your stress effectively. So let's first talk a little bit about the neuroscience behind all of this, or just some basic neuroscience in general. So first and foremost, your brain is an automation machine. You've likely heard me say that already. I'm going to continue saying it over and over. I think people completely misconstrue the process of the brain. And our brain and our mind are different. Our mind is our consciousness around the thoughts, and our brain is the organ that runs the nervous system that creates the thoughts. And so basically the brain's job is simply to automate anything that we do every day. I always joke that it's like a toddler trying to help you in the kitchen, and it's just trying to help. And it's not always doing the right things. So anything that it notices you doing regularly is going to automate for you. So you have up to 70,000 thoughts per day on average. That's approximately 48.6 thoughts per minute. I want you to think about that. 48 thoughts per minute. So that's almost every second. I want to find some statistics on this too, but I don't have them on hand. But ADHD thinkers are also faster than that on average. So if you have ADHD and you feel like that's not enough, you're accurate. Storage capacity is virtually unlimited. So the entire myth that you can't teach an old dog new tricks is completely false. You can learn new things at any time, create new beliefs, and create new habits and systems and ways of being every single day. You just have to understand how to do it. And this is essentially what this training is going to help you to do. In your brain and your body, information is traveling approximately 268 miles per hour. I don't have it on this training, but that is faster than an F1 car. And you can process an image that you see in only 13 milliseconds. So this is why visioneering and creating something that you see is so important. You can process something that you see in 13 milliseconds. That's faster than you blink. If you don't think about blinking, because then you'll blink super slow. But if you think about how quickly you blink, you're processing an image. You can notice a glance of it in 13 milliseconds and go ahead and process it. And your brain is going to process that information and then create those 70,000 thoughts around it. So the things that you see are more important than people give themselves credit for. Now, there's also some downsides in our brain. Our brains have actually shrunk in the last 20,000 years significantly. They are getting smaller and smoother. So we're not as smart. A big part of that is being credited to us no longer navigating, mapping the world. And mapping your surroundings is a really big part of our brain processing, and we don't do that as much. I mean, there's a lot of contributors, but anyways, we're getting dumber. One other contributor to shrinkage is chronic stress. So you're going to hear me always talk about the problems behind stress, but it's literally shrinking your brain. The typical American diet is low in omega-3s, also contributing to shrinkage of your brain. This is a really good time to point out that we are launching the gut brain reset. And we're specifically recommending, it's just me. I'm specifically recommending omega-3s every single day. And it's something that I practice regularly simply to keep a healthy brain. I go more in depth about it in the gut brain reset. So I'll include the offer for that in my notes. And that will be going live at about the same time as this podcast is going live. So be sure to check it out. And if you're listening to this at a later date, it'll still be linked in the notes so that you can access that. And actually, you won't be able to listen to this at a later date because we're taking it down after a week, making it a paid podcast. But if you paid for it, then you can also get the gut brain reset. The average IQ has gone down 13.35 points. These are just some interesting brain facts to pay attention to. And then remember that I said that we have 70,000 thoughts? Well, let me blow you away a little bit. Typically, on average, approximately 70% of those thoughts every single day are negative and recurring thoughts. So they're repeated thoughts from the day prior or the minute prior, and they're more negative than they are positive, which contributes a lot to our self-doubt, our insecurity, our guilt, our shame, our depression, our anxiety. It's our brain automating these negative thoughts before we can even process what's happening. And so visioneering is a great way to start processing what you want to feel like and reverse engineering those thoughts to then be automated more positively. Let's break the average, people. Also, 95% of your decisions occur in the subconscious. So your subconscious brain is written between the ages of 0 and 10. Some people say 7, some people say 16. I'll go around 10. And essentially, it's when your brain creates the entire blueprint mapping of how you perceive the world, what's right, what's wrong, how things are meant to be done. And obviously, if you think of yourself as a little 7-year-old, for example, you don't really understand how the world works. You're just seeing things through very black and white thinking and through a very egocentric lens, which is by design. Our brain doesn't develop the ability to think of others until we're much older, which is why insurance doesn't cover men under 25 because they don't have that capacity in the brain. And so your decisions are occurring in the subconscious, and the subconscious oftentimes, unless you've done a lot of work with me or another professional, is really an underdeveloped child. So if it feels like you are battling in your head with a toddler, you in fact are. There's also over 200 identified cognitive distortions, which are unhelpful thinking patterns. So your brain is an amazing, incredible, fast-paced organ, and your mind and your consciousness are incredible and a power that you want to be able to utilize to your greatest advantage. You should also know that it has disadvantages in its design and in the way that we use it, because so many of us don't understand how it operates. So I think that that's just a really crucial, like, foundational understanding of basic neuroscience before we get into the ways that we want to change our brain, change our belief systems, change the way that we think, and grow into a completely different, more successful, happier person. So with that being said, the brain changes in only two ways. The brain changes through repetition, which is what you hear all the time, right? You need to do this consistently. You need habits, you need routines, you need rituals. You also can change your brain in a completely different way that has nothing to do with that repetition, the routines and rituals. You can change your brain just as effectively through strong emotion. So a sensory experience, being present and connected in the moment, feeling your emotions both physically and mindfully. All of those things can help you also redirect your brain. Now, I say this, and if you think about a time where you completely rewired your existence, most people are going to think of a traumatic experience, right? A strong emotion is one of the quickest ways to change your brain chemistry, and traumatic experiences often come up in people's minds. And that's 100% accurate. A traumatic experience can completely rewire the way that you see the world, but also a positive emotional experience is just as capable of completely blowing your mind and creating a positive change in your brain as well. So they talk about triggers as being the negative existence or the negative response to a traumatic experience that you notice later. The opposite is a glimmer, which I love. The glimmer is noticing the small moments and feeling that pure joy and adrenaline and excitement because you just allow yourself to feel the moment so deeply. And so I want to encourage you to find more glimmers in your day than triggers. And we're going to give you some exercises to practice this real time and really start harnessing it and getting good at it, specifically around some of your goals and exciting things that you're building and putting out into the world. So one of the most basic functions of just psychology in general that you've probably heard of is cognitive behavior therapy. Essentially, the premise of cognitive behavior therapy is a thought leads to a feeling, leads to an action. And so your negative thoughts can lead to upset feelings, which lead to unhelpful behavior. So if you're telling yourself, well, New Year's resolutions are stupid, and then you feel embarrassed for wanting to set a goal and not having achieved them in the past, your brain is going to create your reality. It's going to follow through on the belief that you hold every single time. It's going to create unhelpful behavior, that self-sabotaging behavior that you struggle with as maybe a business owner or just a high achiever in general, where you just start hitting a wall. You want something so bad and you just can't reach it. Maybe it's those $10,000 months, or maybe it is following through on creating a goal like a podcast or something. And every time you get so close, you start finding reasons that you can't do it. Oh, suddenly, oh my God, my kids are sick. And so when I had the motivation, I couldn't do it anymore. Or, oh, this is the month that I finally built up the momentum in my business to make that $10,000. But we had to suddenly fly to somebody's aid across the country. I don't know. These sound ridiculous, but the more you start paying attention to these patterns, the more it happens. And then if you think about what we talked about with Dr. Shalane Carter, how things don't exist, how science has proven that things don't actually exist until we perceive them, it's very much true that your negative thoughts lead to upset feelings, lead to unhelpful behavior, create a universal experience that validates that unhelpful behavior, such as potentially having to go take care of a sick loved one or something. So now that you're understanding the thought, feeling, action, I want you to take a moment and I want you to consider a time where this has actually played out for you in real life. What negative thought have you ever had? What feeling did it cause you to experience? And then what unhelpful behavior did it create? And I want you to pause this for just a moment, and genuinely, I want you to think of 3 of these. And these will probably be easier to think of than when our next activity will be. All right, go ahead. So again, the negative thought that you had, the belief that you had, the negative feeling that you experienced because of that thought, and then the unhelpful behavior that resulted from that thought. I can also caveat this with like, it doesn't have to go in that order. An upset feeling will also lead you to upset behavior, which leads to a negative thought. Unhelpful behavior will lead to negative thoughts, will lead to upset feelings. But because we're focusing so much today on thoughts and beliefs, I want to go in the order of negative thought, upset feeling, unhelpful behavior. Okay, thank you. And then now I'd like us to do the opposite. I want you to think of how that could have been handled differently had you shifted the thought in the moment. So I want you to take the negative thought and replace it, maybe put another number down underneath it, and replace the thought with a positive thought. So almost the exact opposite of what that thought could have been. So if the thought was, I never follow through, and then you felt guilt and shame, and then you found reasons to stay busy enough to not complete the task that you wanted to do, I want you to think of a positive thought. So I always tell my clients, it's difficult maybe sometimes to talk positively to yourself because we don't have a lot of practice with that maybe. And so I want you to talk to you as though you talk to your toddler. We don't say you never follow through to a toddler, right? We're like, you're learning and growing every day, or you're getting so much better than you were yesterday, or I see you trying so hard. And then what resulting feeling would result had you had that thought instead, and what potential behavior could have followed through. So go ahead and do that for each and every one of those. All right. Awesome. I hope that you understand why this is so crucial when our brain is automating thought. We're getting in the habit of disrupting that automation. And even though we're not in the trigger moment right now, this is what creates the glimmer moments. Oh, I didn't expect that to make me emotional, but it's the moments where you catch yourself reframing a negative thought in the moment that you know that you're getting really powerful and that you're disrupting that automation and that you're literally rewiring your brain to think better of you and then to do better. And I think I just got emotional because I've had a lot of that this year, just those moments where I'm like, look at that, I'm doing it. Even that emotion rewires our brain, right? So that's a glimmer moment in and of it. It's a glimmer moment in a glimmer moment. We're in an inception, y'all. So a little mix of the woo and everything. But I want you to just kind of like think on this. Is this starting to make sense? This is essentially how the brain operates. Whatever the brain believes to be true is going to cherry pick through evidence to validate the experience for you and completely negate any evidence of the opposite. So this is why your belief system is absolutely crucial. You will always live up to the stories that you tell yourself. So if you tell yourself that I can never hold on to money, every time I make money, I spend it, you can guarantee that you will not break that pattern. And so your language is so important because your mind is always listening. You can't avoid the thoughts of your mind that are constantly ruminating in here at 268 miles per hour, right? So you have to talk to your brain. Don't listen to it. And you have to be very specific in the language that you use. And I catch my clients doing this all the time. I catch myself doing this all the time, where I'll say something that sounds like a belief that I'm overcoming and catch it in the moment and readdress it. So for example, what we said earlier, every time I make money, I can't hold on to it. That language shift would go from I'm getting better at holding money every day, because you talk in affirmations, you talk in the present, you talk in positives instead of negatively talking to yourself. Does that make sense? So these are things that you'll also want to pay attention to as we start considering what type of visualization you want to refer to. Maybe it's affirmations and knowing how to talk to yourself and what beliefs you have are very helpful for that. If we stick with the neuroscience a little bit, your reticular activating system is the system behind your brain's filtration system, if you will. So it's a bundle of nerves that sits at the bottom of your brainstem. It's going to regulate behavioral arousal, your consciousness, and your motivation. And there are some things that always come through. So think of it like a lint filter in your dryer. No matter what, think of these things as small enough to always get through that filter. Your name, you'll always hear. The things that are new or novel to you, you'll always notice. So even if you're like if you're sleeping on the couch, for example, and somebody's like, "Hey, Lindsay," you can be like in a different dimension in your head and you like startle up, right? And that's because your reticular activating system is always scanning for those things, your name, things that are novel, and things that you have intentionally deemed worthy. Keep track of this because we want our brain to be on the lookout for these things as part of this visioneering process. Your name, fine. But things that are new and novel is what you're always going to be seeking. So if you are a business owner or you just feel like a scattered goal setter to begin with, and you feel like you're constantly going after the new exciting thing instead of following through on the old, that's your reticulating activating system at work, driving for the things that are new, novel, and exciting. It's always going to make its way through. So know that, and know that you have to talk to your brain and redirect your brain. And the things that you have intentionally deemed worthy are also always going to stand out. So I like to explain this like car shopping is, I think, the most used example. And my husband just bought a Hummer, an EV Hummer. I know nothing about cars. I could genuinely care less about cars. I drive a GMC Yukon. I love it. It's the best mom car ever. It's like all black and I feel like all murdered out. Like I'm like a gangster, even though I'm this like little white lady with these two kids. And that's all I need. However, my husband's so excited about his EV Hummer. So it's an electrical charging vehicle, which if you've met my husband is shocking. We never expected him to be an electrical guy, but here we are. But it's also like one of the fastest cars on the road. Like according to the salesman, this thing accelerates faster than a Porsche. And it does. And I hate it. And I don't know. It's a Hummer. It's big, and it's got like lights and whatever other things he's excited about. Anyways, I've never seen one of these things in my life. I've never once noticed one. Never. And he barely ever noticed them either. And then he bought this thing. And then he like pulled up to school feeling like so cool. He's like, "Yeah, we got this new Hummer." And he was like feeling so good about himself. And now we've noticed like 5 other Hummers just in our small neighborhood. Like he thought he had differentiated himself. And whether those 5 were there or not, we'll never know before he bought this car, because our reticular activating system is now scanning for this Hummer because it's something that we've intentionally deemed worthy or something that feels new and novel. So these new Hummers that we're noticing all over the place might have existed all this time, but we only attributed it as worthy of our attention. And so now we're wired to find it. And what our goal is for you to start wiring certain aspects of success in order for your brain to find it, in order for your brain to scan everything else and rule out the unnecessary, filter out all the unnecessary, and bring you to the opportunities that you have deemed worthy and exciting as your goal. All right. So now we're going to talk manifestation. And like I said, I originally got into this with the intention of ruling manifestation as completely BS. But by definition, manifestation is an event, action, or object that clearly shows or embodies something, especially theory or an abstract idea. Now, what really stood out to me when I started doing this research for this training was the embodiment. And I think that was the moment that I was like, oh, because when you watch The Secret, they make it out to be like magic, right? Like it's just magical. Suddenly I'm driving through and I think of a parking spot and a parking spot appears. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm sorry. I said I was going to stop cussing. And I don't know how that translates to embodying specifically, but if you become the type of person who believes that everything is working in their favor, then your brain will look for opportunities to make that a reality. And then if you get crazy with the science, then you actually create those realities, like we talked about with Dr. Schilling Carter. And boom, the parking spot appears. I literally just talked myself out of a limiting belief. I didn't realize I was going to do that. So it's not magic. It is the embodiment of creating the belief system that then rearranges your perception and your surroundings in order to create the validity of your want. All right, so now I want you to take a moment and reflect on your belief system. And there's likely part of you that has beliefs that you would never say out loud to anybody else that are stopping you from meeting your greatest potential. And so I want you to literally get them out on paper and say them aloud. And it's going to feel icky to read it, to literally either speak it out loud or to write it out loud, to see it. I want those limiting beliefs out of your head and out on paper, and I want it to feel icky. And those beliefs can be very similar to the negative thoughts. The beliefs they're a little bit more deeper. They could be like, I don't belong or I don't fit in. So of course people don't buy from me, or of course I'm meant to do this alone, or my parents never made it that far, so I shouldn't be able to make it further than my parents. Or I don't know how to handle money. I don't know what I would do with that type of money. These are the limiting beliefs. They're not accurate. We don't actually have evidence of it. And if we do, we can still change it every single day. But I want you to take a moment, scan your brain, think of all the negative beliefs that you have, and take a moment to write them all down. Okay? And now, again, I want you to think instead of the positive of that belief. So, what were the examples I used? My parents never made it, so I shouldn't be able to be more successful than them becomes something like, my parents set a foundation so that I can go as far as possible. Or what did we say? I can't handle money. I will learn to handle my money the more money I make. I will learn as I go with the more money I make. I will only learn by making more money. There it is. You see how that feels? It's totally different. I will only learn by making more money instead of, I can't handle that amount of money. I've never had that much money. I forgot what the first one was, but I hope that you get the point. Go ahead, take a moment, find the positive of these beliefs, and we're going to keep going. I should also note here that this is a big part of what I do with my one-on-one clients is barrier breakthrough sessions, where we really super deep dive on these belief systems. A lot of times we'll find them through weeks of working together. I'll identify them before a client will. I'll see the pattern jumping out in ways they can be so ingrained that they don't even know that they're happening. And then I do EMDR sessions to reprocess them. We're going to do a little activity to help you understand kind of how that looks. But if you're interested, just something to note about the Mind Performance Accelerator, which I'm only taking very limited clients for, but just something for you to noodle on. Whew, that made me hot. All right. We are making breakthroughs. I hope that this is also sticking for you. So the goal as we are doing this is to really embody your beliefs and be so aware of the belief system that you are able to do exactly what I just did there. So there is a formula to manifestation. And you know, I love me a good formula. These have to be practiced in this order to be effective. All right. So number one, the one that everybody skips, is practice gratitude. If you are not thanking the universe or thanking yourself or celebrating the wins every single day for the things that you have already manifested and not giving yourself credit for, there is no way that your brain or your God or your co-creator or whatever you believe in is going to give you more. Right? That's just not how anything in the universe works. So you have to be paying attention to celebration. That ties into the last episode that we did where we talk about reflecting, finding the wins. This is crucial to being able to manifest more and to get you out of your stuck rut. Number 2 is creating clarity. This is also something that I see people struggle to do. And I'm going to give you a tool, the SMART guide, in order to create clarity on your goals and a few other activities. Then you have to make the ask. You can't be silent about your goals. I don't care what anybody says. You cannot just sit in your head and be like, I wish for whatever, I don't know, this pair of shoes. When you have so many more opportunities to say it out loud and then get the buy-in and the energetic excitement of the people who are cheering you on. And those people exist, and you're often not looking to reach that goal faster. If you don't publicly announce your goals in some state or fashion, I'm not going to say that they won't come true, but they won't come together as quickly as they could if you ask publicly. But at the very least, you need to be asking in a journal or in your mind. But I am a firm believer in doing it publicly. And then you've got to have faith. Now, this is a tricky one because I work with a lot of high performers who don't maybe have the spiritual belief system that I do, and that is totally okay. You don't have to believe what I believe, but you have to believe in something. And I say that as somebody who doubted all of this for a very long time. And I touted myself as being a realist, right? Like, I believe in the evidence. The thing with the evidence is the evidence will always, not always, the evidence keeps you small. Miracles happen every single day. People do things that people never would have believed possible. Like, I don't know when we started flying. I was going to say a date, but the Wright brothers, everybody thought was crazy. And they taught us how to fly in a time when, we didn't think that was even a possibility. And so you don't have to believe in a specific God or a specific religion or even a specific spiritual practice. But at the very, very least, you have to have faith that the unknown exists and that you don't have to be able to explain it and you don't have to understand it and that it can still work. And maybe that unknown is you. Maybe you are capable of operating in ways that you never thought possible. But without faith that the inexplainable can be done, this will not work for you. Once you have determined your goal, you don't get to determine how you reach the goal. So you have to disconnect from the outcome. You set the goal, you set it and forget it. And the way that it's meant to work out, it will work out. And oftentimes I see over and over and over where people have this goal coming at them 1,000,000 miles an hour from different directions. And they're like, no, but I wanted it to come this way. I said it was going to happen this way. For example, as business owners, everybody's always focused on the money, right? And entrepreneurs are always focused on the $10,000. The $10,000 a month, right? Like, that's the biggest achievement that exists. Okay, we'll think of that as a goal. So probably the year that I did this, I also set a goal of a $250,000 income year. And obviously my intent was that was going to come from my business. I was going to make $250,000 that year in income. And I was short. I don't remember the specifics. I don't remember the exact amount, but I ended up selling my house that year. And the amount that I decided to keep towards my business, in addition to my income from that year, wouldn't you know it, was exactly $250,000 of income for my business that year. And I hadn't thought of it until after, like, I was in the new year. I hadn't even thought of it until I was like probably doing Visioneering again. And I was like, oh my God, that 250 came from, I missed the goal, but it was met with the house sale. And at the beginning of the year, I had no intentions of selling my house, but it was COVID. And like, suddenly the market blew up and like, I loved my house. I was renting it. I never thought in a million years I was going to sell my house. And then suddenly I had the opportunity to make a lot of money and keep a lot of that towards building this business. And it ended up being exactly what the goal was. So that's a very specific example. I thought of one. And then finally, you have to be good at receiving. And I would argue that, myself included, that women specifically really struggle with this. If you cannot receive a compliment or an orgasm or somebody being nice to you, somebody doing you a favor, somebody bringing you lunch without being like, oh my God, no, don't do that. No, I can't. You're not going to be able to receive your goals. The universe and you or your brain is creating all these opportunities for you to receive exactly what you've put out in the world saying that you wanted, and you're likely missing them. Your reticular activating system is missing them because you haven't built the skill set of receiving. So if you're listening to this and you're like, holy shit, that's me, then let me know on @MindPerformancePod that you want a podcast episode on receiving. Now, one of my favorite stories that I always like to highlight about faith is about Roger Bannister. So some of you may know, or you may have heard the name Roger Bannister, but most of you are probably women and haven't. So Roger Bannister died as a neuroscientist. However, back in 1945, there was this frenzy amongst the athletic community to hit a 4-minute mile. Let me look this up, actually. We'll come back to it. My brain is thinking overdrive here. What's the fastest mile now ever ran now? Holy shit. Okay. The new world record currently, guys, is 3.43 seconds. In 1945, 80 years ago, it was unthinkable to beat the 4-minute mile. And coaches and universities were doing everything in their power to make this happen. They were training their athletes. They were keeping track of training conditions in the most pristine conditions. If they had trained their athletes specifically on all of these factors that they deemed important, they thought it could be done. And eventually everybody's losing hope. Like, they think like nobody is going to be able to beat this 4-minute mile. The greatest athletes and coaches in the world could not do this. And then in comes this med student at Oxford, Roger Bannister, on this random competition day. It was cold and windy and wet. It was not pristine conditions. He was not trained by all of these elite coaches with all of this knowledge and expertise. He was just a med student. But in his mind, and this is why I like the guy, he thought that there was more to psychological training than there was to physical training. So obviously he was doing the physical training too, because you have to embody, but he believed in the training of the psyche in addition to his physical training. And sure enough, on that random, rainy, wet, muddy day, he ran in the mud. He didn't run on concrete or that bouncy fucking rubber that we get now. No, this man ran in the mud. Previously, the goal had been 4 minutes and 1 second. And on May 1954, he hit 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. And this is why faith is so important, because he didn't have anybody to prove that he could have done it. And so it had taken years to reach that goal for the community. And I don't even know who deemed the 4-minute mile the hard thing to do. I think that that's important to note too, is somebody somewhere deemed a 4-minute mile impossible, and it got in the heads of all of these athletes who then suddenly couldn't hit this 4-minute mile. And then this random dude who's not even an elite trained athlete comes and does it. So that's the power of your mind too, right? But then the powerful thing about this story is he does it, and suddenly everybody else is like, well, holy hell, if this man can do it, I sure as hell can do it. And 46 days later, that record was beat. And then it was beat 2 more times before the end of the year. So this is really just the power of having evidence. And I want, everybody that followed Roger used the power of evidence to prove to themselves that they could run faster. But Roger relied on his psychological training and just the belief that he could do it, even when everybody else said it was completely implausible. And that, to me, is what it means to have faith. It doesn't have to do with anything weird that you're not ready to talk about or think about. It just has to do with the belief and the faith in yourself to do it regardless of what anybody else anywhere says. Okay. That gets me impassioned. So sometimes you get really good at manifesting and you'll start noticing it and it'll blow your mind how quickly things start coming through. And so I want to just go ahead and give you permission right now to say no. And that is not a bad thing, because I don't want you to ever get in the mental state that you manifest something coming to fruition. Suddenly it's there. It's no longer the right timing. It's not the right fit. And you don't want your brain to automate you blocking yourself again. So you put yourself in an uncomfortable position to accept it. Saying no is a really powerful thing, as long as you're telling yourself the story that I'm so powerful that I can make whatever happen come true. And if I no longer want it or it's no longer of service, that's fine. I can manifest my next desire just as quickly. Don't let that belief change to, no, it's coming too fast. Because how often do we do that as high achievers? No, this is too much. It's too much too fast. And then suddenly you can't get back up to that momentum. So I don't want you to ever tell yourself that you're too powerful or it's happening too quickly for you or that you're not prepared for it, because that stretch period where it might feel uncomfortable is where capacity is grown, but it's still evidence of you being able to manifest effectively. And you don't want to turn that off, because it's like turning a ship around. It's like turning around the Titanic, right? It takes a long time to get back to that momentum and motivation of being able to manifest things. So an example I have of that is I was doing all of this visioneering work, and at the time we still lived in Las Vegas, and there's a street that was near my home called Tamiyasu, and it's where Wayne Newton's estate is. It was for sale when we moved, and I don't know if it ever sold, but it is this massive property. And when I first moved there, it was still functioning, and there was these Arabian horses, and like he has this beautiful grazing pasture for all of these beautiful horses, and there's a plane on his property. And it's not just him that lived there. Mike Tyson also lived there. I think they filmed one of the scenes from The Hangover at a property in that area. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But he did live there with his tigers on Tamiyasu. Other celebrities, I can't remember who, but there were just tons of celebrities. And these were nice homes, but not like, I mean, obviously Wayne Newton's estate was massive and gorgeous, but like these were a mix of like older homes and newer builds. And there's this other community. It was an equestrian community right smack dab in the middle of Henderson. It's so funny. And they literally have like horse valet parking, and they would just walk around on their horses. And that's not even where Wayne lived. Anyways, Tamiyasu was this desired community. In my mind, it was the ultimate. It was like Vegas extraordinaire, you know? And so I lived so close. It was the first time I was in proximity to this potential lifestyle. And so I started seeing if I could manifest moving onto Tamiyasu. And it was completely ludicrous at the time, like absolutely ridiculous, not even a shot. In 2020, like I had just graduated from grad school and opened my business. I was in no place to be looking at multi-million-dollar homes. But I want to say it was like 2022 or 2023. I don't know why I'm saying 20 like that. An opportunity came up. There was a new build and we could afford it. It was very low priced compared to everything else there. But it was on Tamiyasu and it was still in the proximity. And it was a beautiful new build. And it was way more expensive than I'd ever considered purchasing a home for. But like Tony and I were in a position to do it. And we literally got a realtor and we were so excited. I was like, oh my God, I was driving up and down that street every day. I kid you not. I was embodying the Tamiyasu experience. I was parking my car on that road. And I'm saying, guys, for years, I did this for well over a year. I would park my car in the shade in these beautiful willow trees and work there and just allow myself to be surrounded by this wealth and excitement. And I was like, I'm going to live here. And sure enough, we hired a realtor and we did a walkthrough and we were looking at floor plans to build. And I hated it. We both hated it. The options that they had, we hated. Like we would have never spent this kind of money on this home anywhere else. And it was a really powerful decision to be like, no, but I did it. I manifested this. I made this come true out of thin air. I made this a reality. And to walk away from that was really difficult, but I didn't even want it. And so that's exactly what I mean about giving yourself the power to say no. It doesn't take away from your ability to manifest. If anything, it gives you even more power to know how to use manifestation appropriately. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into the nitty gritty of it. So I talked about, like proximity, putting myself in the area, and a massive part of visioneering is visualizing. And this is something I encourage my clients to do every single day. It's something that I've gotten in the practice of again this year. My next episode, I'll give you guys a life update because I feel like I'm changing and you guys should hear about it. And visualization is a big part of my practice right now. I kind of like cycle through all of these activities as necessary. And visualization is a big one right now. But here's the neuroscience of why it's so important. Your brain cannot decipher the difference between a very strong visualization and something that's actually happening in real life, which is why if you recall an old embarrassing moment, maybe if you think of your most embarrassing moment in like the 6th grade or something, you might notice your face flushing and you're like, oh my God, you get that like icky feeling like, oh God, it's not happening in real time, right? But your body will physiologically respond to that feeling. And the same thing happens when you create strong visualizations. Now, this is crucial because we said your brain rewires in one of 2 ways, right? Repetition, habits, routine, all of the things that I teach as like just your basics, your fundamentals, the mind fundamentals, right? You're being in the routine of taking care of yourself and embodying your best version of yourself. Well, now the emotion comes at play with your visualization where you're visualizing this exciting thing and allowing yourself to experience the positive emotion of that thing. And that, chef's kiss, that is where the magic happens. When you allow yourself to visualize so strongly that you can exert an emotional feeling from that visualization, that is the fastest key to making something happen. So I have another story about that because I obviously work as a performance coach and corporate training wants a lot of validation, and you probably do too. So one of my favorite stories is Nathan Sharansky, who I know you guys all know him, right? Very famous. No, I'm kidding. He was a prisoner in a USSR prison way back in I don't have the dates. Sorry. I mean, USSR hasn't existed since what, the 80s? So he was sometime back then. But he spent 9 years in a USSR prison, not just prison, solitary confinement. All right. This man had nothing. And all he did in his head or in his cell was practice mental chess. He was a big fan of chess. And so in order to stay stimulated and stay on his game as much as possible during those 9 years of solitary confinement, that is not humane, but the man is a mental genius, apparently. He practiced mental chess. And I don't know if you've ever played chess. I'm new to chess. It feels like a very complicated game. There's a lot of moving pieces, like literally. Maybe is that where that phrase comes from? Anyways, there's a lot of moving pieces. They all move in different directions and ways, and they all have different rules. And so it's a lot. If I think about visualizing an entire chess game, that's intense. But I guess he had a lot of time on his hands. Anyways, obviously, he never had his own chess set. Like the man was on solitary confinement. They weren't humane enough to give him toys. But upon his release, he beat the world champion just by practicing visually. Similarly, there have been studies that show that in comparison groups of people who are learning piano with an actual piano and with their fingers, and people who are taught that learning the piano mentally, visually, through visualization will be just as effective as learning with a keyboard, are just as effective, if not better. Sometimes the group that doesn't even have the keyboard or the piano is more effective than the group learning with a goddamn piano. Is that mind-blowing? Your mind is so crazy. So I just want you to understand the power of visualization, your ability. And this isn't just like, it is daydreaming. I'm a big fan of daydreaming, but you want to be very intentional with your visualization. You want to be in as detailed as possible. I think maybe this is one of the biggest things that our cell phones take away from us is our ability to disconnect enough to really visualize as deeply as we need to be as effective, now that I think of it, because so many of us don't have the attention span to spend very much time getting into deep thought like this. But we're going to spend some time today. So other athletes also credit mental rehearsal and visualization to the expertise of their skill set, including Jack Nicklaus in golf, Tiger Woods also in golf, Michael Phelps, Simone Biles. Yes. So visualization is a powerful thing and something that we're going to go ahead and do. Let's take a few moments right now. This is, what's the French word for the moment you've been waiting for? I don't know if that's even what it is. Anyways, the coup de grace? I don't know. This is it. Here we go. Now, I want you to settle in and get comfortable. Okay, you're settled in. And now I want you to do either butterfly taps, which are, if you're watching on YouTube, you cross your arms across your chest and you tap your arms in an alternating pace like this. I hope you can hear this. So it's left, right, left, right, left, right. If that's uncomfortable for you, you can tap your thighs, the tops of your thighs. But again, alternating left, right, left, right, left, right. All right, now continue that pace. Do not stop. Settle in. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. And I want you to allow yourself to create the strongest, most detailed visualization of your best future self. I want you to consider what it would look like if you removed all limitations, the expectations from your friends or family, the expectation of your peers, the expectations of reality. What in your wildest dreams, allow this to be your wildest dream, would your life look like as the best version of yourself? Take a moment and guide yourself through your day as this best version of yourself. Who's around you? What do you do all day? Where are you located? Are you even in the city that you currently reside? I wasn't. Allow this to be sensorial. So take a deep breath in. Notice what scents are around you. Reach out and touch something in your visualization. Now notice the emotions that you're experiencing in this best version of yourself. Chances are you don't feel that anxious urge to just be doing like you're accustomed to right now. Take note of the emotions that don't exist and allow them to be replaced with the emotions that do. Calmness, steadiness, confidence, peace. What does that even feel like in your body? So much gratitude that it makes you cry. Keep taking a look around. Do a 360 and take a deep breath in through your nose. Let it out through your mouth. Go ahead and open your eyes. And hurry. Take a moment and note down everything that you noticed in your journal. Now we have your North Star. Now we have your vision. We can visioneer around it. I want you to consider how you got there from here. What would have had to change? You don't have to change anything. You don't have to do anything right now. But I want you to consider what is potentially blocking you now from becoming that person then. What new habits will you have to create to be that person? What belief systems would have to be in place for you to be that person? What fears do you have to learn how to overcome? What failures are you going to have to face to get there? Who do you have to meet? Take another moment, pause this if you need, and really just dive in. Get crazy, writing down as much as you notice and as much as you notice about the gap between here and now. And then when you're ready, unpause, and we're going to create a roadmap. All right. Now that we have this North Star, and also I want to give you permission to not feel wrong if your North Star is not anything that you've ever imagined or dreamt of ever before. There is something inside you that popped up in that exact moment, and I don't believe in coincidences. I think that everything happens for a reason, and whatever that feeling or vision was, no matter how ludicrous, it is truly meant for you. God or your brain or the universe or whatever you believe in would not have put it there if it was not meant for you to achieve. So go ahead and release that feeling of, well, that is ridiculous. Note that down as a limiting belief. And then we want to reverse engineer this. I don't know how far into the future your North Star looks. Maybe it's 10 years in the future. Maybe it's 5 years in the future. And maybe it's 1 year in the future. Maybe it's 50 years. Hopefully not, because we're probably all around the same age. I hope that you reach peace and that happiness long before your final decades here. So we're going to do a roadmap, and I want you to write a page in at least 2 columns, if not 3. And you want to do it backwards. So if you feel like this is a 10-year goal, go ahead and give yourself a 10-year column, and then give yourself a 5-year column, and then give yourself a 1-year column. And in all of the reflection that we did about what needs to change, what habits can we shift, what beliefs do we need to challenge, what do we need to fail at, who do we need to meet, put those realizations in one of these columns: 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year. This way we can reverse engineer it and stay focused exactly on what we need to achieve in just the upcoming year, because there's going to be things that, like, you're not to a place to be able to do. And so that's going to go in the 5-year column. Maybe it's a move, and you know that you're not going to be able to move across the country within the year, but it can be in your 5-year goal. And instead, we're going to focus this year because we want to use our energy as effectively as possible. What can we focus on this year? Then, though, but you keep track of these, because next year, potentially, what can you move from your 5-year column to your 1-year column, and vice versa, Okay. So take some time and move your realizations into the appropriate columns. This is the struggle that I think that most people make when creating a vision board, is they just plop it all on the sheet, and they're just going through a magazine, cutting out things that they like. There's no strategy or intention behind it. They want this bag. They want to travel to Bali. They want to go, whitewater rafting, and they want to have a baby. And there's just not strategy behind it. And so when I made my first vision board, because I'm ridiculous, I did it in a 10 and a 5 and a 1-year column. And I literally cut out my things to go in the appropriate columns, so I knew exactly what to focus on. I actually don't recommend anymore that you do it that way, because the whole point of having the thing to look at, the board or the affirmations or the lines of gratitude or the words, the whole point is for you to see it regularly and for it to jog your brain in that 13 milliseconds to then be influence to go out into the world to look for those things and then to create opportunities for those things to become a reality. And so if those things are not your focus this year because you have other things you should be focusing on this year, it's going to overload you and be less effective. So I encourage you not to plan more than 5 years out on whatever your vision board is. And whether it's your laptop wallpaper or a poster board or whatever the case may be. Now that we are considering these goals and creating the North Star version of yourself, I want you to get very smart for your goal planning this year. And I'm surprised how many people I still meet that have not heard of SMART goals. To me, this was like absolutely necessary in the corporate world. Like we could not operate without SMART goals. It was something that was like hammered into us. And I still meet clients all the time that haven't heard of SMART goals. So no shame if you haven't, but it's going to change your life. So SMART goals, you have to be specific. Remember, if you're going to manifest, you got to be clear. You have to know what you're going after. You have to be measurable. So that's why I like doing this in a year-long format, is what can I achieve and measure progress on this year in order to continue moving in the right direction. It has to be attainable. Like, take that lightly. Because what you think you can achieve in a year versus what you can achieve in a year is sometimes not the same thing, right? So push yourself, but don't make it like, if you've never made more than 100,000 in your business and suddenly you want to be making 8 figures and like multi-million dollars, that's probably not attainable. There's some work in there. Maybe people have done it, but don't be an asshole, because you're the one who's going to suffer in the long run. Because when you don't reach your goals, then it tells yourself that you can't reach your goals. And then you're in that negative thinking all over again. You want to make it achievable so that you have evidence that you can continue following, pushing, and getting better and faster at achieving your goals year over year. It needs to be relevant. So this is why doing the North Star visualization is so important. I think we can go ahead and cross that out, unless for whatever reason you feel like the North Star isn't relevant, in which case I would encourage you to do some reflection on why your brain would bring up something that feels irrelevant. Are you moving in the wrong direction in your life right now? And you are wanting to be in a completely different place. Now is the year to consider, how do you start doing that? Even if that feels completely impossible. And again, you always can. You can become anybody you want to be every single day. I firmly believe that. You can change everything tomorrow. And then finally, time-based. We have our 1-year time limit. And so that's going to help us to measure progress. I didn't make measurable as specific as I should have. So measurable is you want to talk in numbers. And so the way that I do this is with scaling numbers with my clients, like rate yourself currently on a scale from 1 to 5. Okay, you're a 2. We want to be a 3 to a 4 by the end of the year. Or numbers obviously can be in numbers, like dollars. So whatever way you can make it measurable so that you can record progress. And then obviously any business owner is considering all of these things and reflecting quarterly anyways. Any established business owner, I don't want to shame you if you're not there yet. I encourage you to reflect on these things quarterly. If you're setting goals, you should be checking in quarterly. And so measure your progress there within your business and within your personal life. Now, habit hacking is something that I teach all the time. And the way to train your brain to be as successful as possible is to train the automation system. So we know that you are going to do things faster. You're going to rewire faster by being repetitive and creating routines. So I want you to start ridiculously small because, again, we want to give your brain evidence that you can succeed. So if your year-end goal is $100,000 and you've never hit a $10,000 a year yet, then I want you to set your goal for January as something that you've already hit. So let's say your goal is $1,000 and you're already making consistent $3,000 to $4,000 months. I'm just using this. I just feel like this is like the easiest way for everybody to understand. Even if this doesn't pertain to you, it's numbers that make sense. So obviously we know reverse engineering that $100,000 over 12 months, I was going to say it's $10,000 a month, and that's not math. You can see how good I am in my business, and my phone is dead. I think it's like 8,000 something every month that you have to make. Anyways, you're not going to set your goal at 8,000 for that month. You're going to set your goal at something that you know you can achieve, maybe 1,000. You want to crush that goal because that's going to give your brain confidence and evidence that you are able to achieve your goal, even if it's not quite in line with hitting $8,000 every month. Because what's going to happen is you allow your brain to see the evidence and to celebrate, and it's going to get better at creating these opportunities and allowing you to win. And so they're going to go up, and eventually, let's say in January, you hit 3,000, even though the goal was 1,000. February, you set the goal of 3,000, you hit 5,000. By March, you're hitting 8,000. And then you're hitting 10,000 and making up for that January. Does that make sense? Again, I'm trying to make the math very simple, even if this doesn't relate to where you are in your business. If you're making much more or much less, this is just something everybody can relate to. I also encourage you to find accountability. Part of asking out loud is also asking for help out loud. And so letting people know your goals, letting people know your progression is also really helpful. All right. Now, you have a notebook full of data. And in order for this to be effective, it needs to be visible to you every single day. So I want you to go through that journal and decide, am I going to make a vision board, a true traditional vision board with a collage? If you do that, I actually saw people the other day that ordered these literal vision board catalogs from Amazon. And it was these beautiful aesthetic pictures for all kinds of things that people aspire to, like travel and whatever. Highly encouraged. So look that up on Amazon if you do that. If you decide to do it on your wallpaper, I've done really fun ones with companies on Canva, and then they use it on their work screens. You can also do it as a phone thing. It doesn't have to be images. It just has to be visible. So go through your data and decide what you need your brain to see to wire itself effectively by noticing it every day. And then I need you to place it. So even if the thing is just a sticky note that goes on the mirror that you brush your teeth in the morning, even if you don't pay attention to it every day, your brain will notice it and continue the process automation behind the scenes of wiring opportunities for you to grow and to achieve those in the background. So go through your data, decide what is relevant for you to take out, find out what you're going to write down in order to aspire to and where it's going to be so that you notice it. And then this has been longer than I told myself I wanted podcasts to be, but hopefully you are still here and this has been really helpful and kind of mind altering for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the form of a review, or always comment or DM me at Mind Performance Pod on Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love for you to share your goal or your visioneering visual. Let me see where it's at. You can blur out the words if you don't want other people to see it, but also remember, you need to ask publicly. So put it out there, get seen, be heard. Let us all work for you. Yeah, this is all about community. And again, this podcast is only going to be up for a week. So if you're listening live at the launch, thank you so much for being here. And if you've paid for this later, then also thank you so much for being here. I hope you've all found this very helpful. Until next week, bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Mind Performance Pod. If you got value today, make sure to subscribe and leave a quick review. It really helps others find the show. As a thank you, grab your free Mind Fundamentals Compounding Consistency Habit Tracker at the bottom of the homepage on lindsaypaoli.com. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Mind Performance Pod for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes content. Can't wait to see you in the next episode.